زيد حول التقرير التقيت الدكتور مسعود أحمد مدير دائرة الشرق الأوسط وآسيا الوسطى في صندوق النقد الدولي، وسألته أولا أين يتوقع أن يرى تباطؤا في الإنفاق الحكومي من قبل الدول المصدرة للنفط نتيجة تراجع أسعار النفط.
So the first thing that's important to remember is that the countries in the Gulf have built up financial reserves over many years, and this allows them to adjust their spending in a gradual way rather than in an abrupt way. Where you're likely to see a more immediate adjustment in spending is in countries that have not built up the reserves. So today in Iraq, for example, you're beginning to see a cutback in spending plans. In countries like Iran, you're seeing a cutback in spending plans. Those countries don't have the same kind of financial buffers.
بالنسبة لدول الخليج تتحدثون عن تحديات يمكن أن تواجهها في الحفاظ على حصتها السوقية في أسواق النفط. لماذا ترون هذه التحديات؟
The important point here is that the countries in the Gulf have in fact increased their production or maintained their production even in the face of falling prices to be able to sustain their market share, and we think that this is likely to continue for a while. However, in the medium term, some other countries where production is currently low, either because of conflict, for example, a country like Iraq, a country like Libya, or because of sanctions, a country like Iran, will see some increase in their production levels, and also there is increased production in the medium term again from non-conventional sources like shale oil. So all these increasing sources of supply will also have to be managed within an aggregate demand for oil, and that will pose a challenge for all of the countries involved to be able to maintain their market share.
هل تتوقعون أن نرى في أي من دول المنطقة ظروفا تمويلية ضيقة ربما مع بدء العد العكسي لعودة السياسة النقدية الأمريكية إلى مسارها الطبيعي؟
Many countries in our region in fact rely mainly on their own financial resources or on financing from official agencies, so they are not likely to be so much affected. But countries which are more integrated into international financial markets, countries like Bahrain, countries like the UAE, and some oil importing countries, countries like Morocco, countries like Tunisia, which are accessing financial markets, are countries that are going to see some increase in borrowing costs as interest rates go up. And it's not just countries themselves, but even companies in these countries who are going out and financing. Now, it's important to remember that these countries generally have good credit, so while we'll see some increase in borrowing costs, it should be manageable.
انعكس تراجع أسعار النفط تراجعا في أسواق الأسهم في المنطقة. هل تخشون على القطاع المصرفي؟
The banking sector in the Middle East and North Africa generally is very sound. If you look at the countries of the GCC, for example, banking sector is sound. It has a high profitability, it has strong capital base, and increasingly the regulatory framework and the supervisory framework is also there to ensure that the banking sector's risks are well managed. So the banking sector is not an area of primary concern as we look at these economies.
ما نوع خطط الإصلاح المالي التي تودون أن تروها من دول المنطقة، لا سيما وسط احتمال بقاء أسعار النفط منخفضة ربما لفترة طويلة؟
Precisely because we think that it's prudent to plan for oil prices being lower than they were for some years to come. We do think that most of the countries that are oil exporters in the region will need to gradually, but in a determined and progressive way, adjust their spending plans. So the kind of spending plans that I think that people in these countries would like to see, and that certainly we would be very happy to see, are plans that look at the medium term, not just 1 year or 2 years, but look over the next 3, 4 or 5 years, that look at how in a gradual way the adjustment can be made, that also look at where best to make the adjustment. So in our view, for example, it's better to preserve some investment spending where that is linked to improving the quality of infrastructure or productivity. It's important to preserve safety nets for the poor because that's something that you want to ensure is kept. Perhaps controlling the wage bill in the public sector, which has been growing quite rapidly in a number of countries, is one target area that some countries will look at. And another area which we think is a good candidate mandate is to continue to look at subsidies for energy products. As you know, even after the fall in energy prices, energy subsidies are still quite large in many oil exporting countries in the Middle East and North Africa. This is one of the reasons why when energy consumption is slowing down, the demand is slowing in the rest of the world, when we look at our own countries, we see the demand for energy is still growing very fast.
كيف تقيمون من هنا التجارب المختلفة في مقاربة موضوع رفع الدعم في المنطقة؟
I think they're encouraging. If you look at oil importing countries, I think they can give us a lesson here. Countries like Jordan, Morocco, Tunisia, Egypt, even Yemen have gone through a process where gradually they have started to raise their energy prices and reduce the cost of subsidies for their budget. When you look at the oil exporting countries, they're also over the last year, 18 months, we see more discussion of this issue and also some action. So a number of countries, Bahrain, here in the UAE, in Kuwait, have begun to raise energy prices for some products. But still, there is some way to go because there are still many other energy products that are subsidized. So I see encouraging progress, but I also see work to be done in the next few years.
أخيرا، في الدول المستوردة للنفط ثمة شعور بأن الوفر المحقق في محطات الوقود لا ينعكس مباشرة ارتفاع في الإنفاق الاستهلاكي. هل السبب فقط هو موضوع الدعم؟
Well, the two reasons for it. One is that in many oil importing countries, the savings that they have made at the level of the country in terms of lower oil import bills have not been fully passed on to the consumer. Some of them have been used to strengthen the budget, and we think it's a good idea because in many of these countries the budgetary position was a little bit fragile to start with. The second reason is that while some of these savings have been passed through to consumers, there are also other factors that are affecting the spending behavior of consumers. Some of them are still recovering from a degree of uncertainty. Some of them are trying to rebuild their own capacity to spend in the future. So you don't see quite as much impact on consumption as you would in some other countries. Having said that, one of the reasons why the oil importing countries in the Middle East and North Africa are growing this year at about 4% compared to 3% last year is because they are benefiting from the positive impact of lower oil prices, but they're also benefiting from the positive impact of some of the reforms that they have undertaken themselves, and the political transitions are being completed, so uncertainty is being reduced. All this coming together makes the prospects for these countries a bit better this year, but there is one risk which they face, which is the risk of spillovers from some of the conflicts in the region, which are a source of worry not only for the countries where they're happening, but also for their neighbors.
في هذا الإطار أي الدول تسبب لكم القلق الأكبر؟
Well, immediate countries that come to mind are Jordan and Lebanon, which, as you know, have been affected not just in terms of refugees, whom they have very generously hosted from Syria, but also in terms of trade, in terms of tourism. And the other country that very tragically we saw recently an impact was, of course, Tunisia, where the horrific attack on the Bardo Museum brought to the light, to the front, the consequences of some of the risks that countries like Tunisia are now subject to. And you also see the consequence of that already in terms of some of the impact on tourism plans for Tunisia. So we do see the impact of security and spillovers from conflicts in many countries across the region, and throughout the region it has an impact a little bit on confidence of investors.